Hi, I'm so excited to be here with one of my long-term friends, Jackie Lapin. And hi, Mitchell Levy, global credibility expert. And my interest in talking with, are you ready? Super cool people. My interest in speaking with people who are credible is to focus on and learn a little bit more about how they actually are living their values. And so I'm kind of curious to learn a little bit more about this from Jackie. And let me just say for the audience who is going to get to know, love, and trust you just a little bit more, Jackie, who are you?
So, Mitchell, my mission is to help leaders, experts, authors, coaches, and entrepreneurs get on more stages faster in more platforms so they can introduce their products and resources to a bigger audience. My company is called SpeakerTunity. And what we do is go out and pre research speaker leads for individuals. We've curated the different kinds of leads that you can possibly lead and need: live and virtual speaking, conferences, radio shows and podcasts, virtual summits, virtual networking, TEDx's. So you don't have to go find them anymore. We've got them all. And you can either pursue them on your own, or we now have a strategic partner that'll actually pursue them with you or for on your behalf. And then we give you the tools to get booked, like speaker one sheets and training programs. And we just make it so simple. So we call it, well, we're officially SpeakerTunity, the speaker and leader resource company. Unofficially, the ultimate speaker toolbox, one-stop shopping for the speaker and leader.
I hear you, and I'm gonna say, I love your response, and you're really good at this stuff. And it what I want to do is focus a little bit more on the values piece of it. And I appreciate that. The way I heard you was people wanting to get on stages, or people finding more stages. If I'm just thinking about this in 3 or 4 words, why do you do that?
Well,
Why is that
so
important?
so I guess that for me, my story goes back a little bit when I was a child, when we moved to a place that was very unwelcoming, and I didn't have a voice. I wasn't heard. And so it became essential for me in my adulthood to give other people voices. And I've been doing that for years as a publicist. And then, through this company and the radio podcast tours we've been doing on my other company, essentially, for me, the most important value is to give people an opportunity to be the best versions of themselves so they can help other people be the best versions of themselves. So that's really the mission.
So when you were younger, do you or were you feeling like you weren't the best version of yourself?
I felt that I was always myself, but I wasn't really appreciated by a lot of other people.
Ah, ooh, that's interesting.
I've always followed an inner guidance. If you'd say, what I say is I follow God's breadcrumbs and listen to the inner voice. But it's sometimes hurtful when people don't see you the way that you want to be seen in the world. And I learned that very young. And so as I grew older, it was really imperative for me to tune out the negativity and really live the purpose that I knew to be mine.
Hmm. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, how did you know when you were young your purpose?
So when I was 11, I married my two favorite subjects, the Los Angeles Dodgers and writing. And I said, I'm going to be a sports writer. And there were no women sports writers in that era.
Uh-huh.
And so I focused entirely on that. And as you may know my story, at 20, I was at the Detroit Free Press, and 21, I was at the Associated Press and the front pages of the LA Times, and 22, I was at the Washington Post. So my purpose was always clearly ahead of me. That's what I wanted to do. But from that point, then things just unfolded, just simply unfolded. From there, it became a leap to, well, I want to do sports public relations. And so I went that direction. And again, people were saying, well, she'll never succeed. She's a girl. And of course, we proved them wrong with a world-class agency for 20 years that had, some of the biggest clients in the world. And so, it's the purpose. The purpose is always unfolding. It is not already. It's always something that you set and that you follow a straight line. If you're listening, you will find the curves that you're supposed to take.
So when did you unravel God's purpose for you? When did that, like, how old were you?
Well, let me tell you when I realized that God had a hand in my life. I was in the middle of having my public relations agency, and there were points when things weren't going really well financially, but I also wasn't making the wisest decisions from a moral standpoint. And I
Mm.
realized that when I walked the moral path, according to my morality, when I walked that moral path, the universe always took care of me. Even if that was like I was down to my last penny, the money would show up in the bank as soon, as long as I was doing that. If I, was fooling around on the other side, maybe not. But if I stayed on that path, money always showed up. I was always taken care of. And I realized that there was a bigger hand involved in taking care of me if I took care of business in the way that it needed to be taken care of appropriately.
That's interesting. So from a credibility perspective, to me, I think about the word servant leadership as one of the 10 values. I think about the intent and commitment to do the right thing. And I think what you're looking at here is having integrity, both external and internal. And so when you were doing things that really you knew was wrong, but you were doing it. By the way, just so you know, everyone has this marketing cookie cutter approach. It's hard. Even me, and I'm trying to shed those. Even I do that, right? And but even when you knew, that was really fascinating.
Well,
And when you, yeah,
Mitchell, that wasn't necessarily just in my business. If I was morally stepping into an area that was not appropriate outside of my business, it impacted my business.
oh, fascinating. Oh, that's really fascinating. Huh. All right. So when when was that? Like when did you put your arms around realizing that you need to have that your internal integrity counter needs to be morally in the right line? When was that?
In my early 30s, as
Okay.
my agency was just starting to take off. And you touched on what became my core value. And I think it was partially there, but it wasn't quite there until at that point. And one of my two core values, and that is integrity. And that is something that I live every single day of my life. And I expect that of everybody in my environment and that to the people that I do business with. And if they're not in integrity, then we don't do business for very long. And
Mm.
so integrity is my number one value. No questions. I'm always going to try to do the right thing, even if it's painful to me. But because I believe that that is the way the world works. If you live in integrity, then other people will come to you. You'll be attracted. You live with your own sense of trust and connection to the universal power of creation, and it just simply makes everything work. If you're out of integrity in any sense and it doesn't mean that you can't fall off the wagon in some tiny aspects of your life, but if you're living in integrity with the work that you do with people, then you're going to make sure that they get value. You're going to make sure that they have a happy experience, even if they are unhappy. You work to make them happy, or you come to an agreement that this is the best we can do and we need to part ways. And if you're living in integrity, you're going to have those challenging conversations with people that that you may dread going in, but if you have them and don't avoid them and don't walk away from them, you prevent things from blowing up in your face, and you'll walk away knowing that you've made the best effort, even if it's not received in the way that you intended to. If you're operating
Mm.
in integrity, you try to find the most conscious and conscientious way of delivering bad news or making a compromise instead of demanding your right in the world. And so that's my biggest. My second value is complements that, and that is living in compassion, understanding, kindness, gratefulness, so that when, and this was one I learned a really hard way, because in the early days of my career, I was a little challenging to work for. I'll be really honest. I demanded results. I wanted my people to stand up to my level. I wanted to please the client, but that meant sometimes whipping my own staff. And they knew that I loved them, and that I knew they knew that I cared, but I didn't have the most kind and compassionate way of talking to them. And until one of my staff came to me and said, "You realize you're being very unconscious." And that was a new word for me in those days. And I began to read and learn what consciousness is all about, and being aware of what you say to people and how you say it. And I became a different person. I learned how to communicate with people with kindness and compassion, even when I'm not happy with them. And in doing so, it's made everything work. It makes people want to stay a long time with me. I've got one of my people who've been with me 17 years, one that's been with me 7, one that's been with me 5, and a new gal who keeps telling me how much she loves working for us. So that doesn't happen if you don't have the kinds of relationships where you can be honest, integrity, kind, and compassionate.
Nice. Agreed. Yes, yes, and yes. I curious, because you mentioned this about your company and people working with you for a while. Do you have are those values the same values that are corporate values, or do you have a set of values that you share with those on your team, and they all know about them?
They are the values I live by in everything. And they know about them because they wouldn't be on my team if they didn't live the same values. And they agree that this is the way to operate. I didn't have to instill them. I simply had to pick the right people.
You chose. Right.
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. And there's something that keeps bringing me back on the integrity side. I have, of the 10 values of credibility, integrity is in 2 locations. It's under the pillar being trusted. And to me, that's your external integrity. And I separated integrity between what you show externally and what you live internally. And so under being known is your internal integrity, because there really is a separation. There are many politicians who externally may have what is looked like as perceived external integrity, but internally they might be a mess. And what you said right away is, hey, listen, if you're not being moral, if you're not living with the integrity, it doesn't matter where in your life it affects everything. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Sure. Everything is energy in the world. And if you are disconnected from that positive flow of energy because you're doing something that is not in alignment with your values and the values of right living, caring for others, being a servant, supporting the people in your life, taking, then in fact, the energy that you're putting out is going to put blocks in your way. And so if you are aligned with the positive energy, then you're going to find yourself in a much greater state of flow.
Can't agree with you more. Huh.
I wrote 2 books on how energy works. best-selling books some years ago, The Art of Conscious Creation, How You Can Transform the World, and Practical Conscious Creation, Daily Techniques to Manifest Your Desires. And in the process of exploring and learning, it became very apparent that, positive energy management is really the key to living a life that is one that you want to have, rather than being a victim of life.
You're saying energy management. Some people would say living in abundance. How would you distinguish those?
Well, abundance is a result of energy management.
Oh.
If you're managing your energy well, you'll be abundant. If you're not managing your energy well, if you're living in negativity, if you're jealous, angry, frustrated, and in a state of extreme worry and anxiety, the energy's not flowing. It's stuck. And therefore the abundance works with flow. And so
that's interesting. Okay, I got it. This was a nomenclature thing. I had a conversation this morning with somebody on abundance, and I see it. I thank you for that clarification. Was perfect. Because yes, abundance is really a end result, but some people market with the end result in mind. From a marketing, sometimes you market with pain points, sometimes you market with pleasure points, and that was interesting to think about, because what I call the black box, the stuff that you actually do, you're saying is the energy management.
It's choosing how you think, what the emotions are that you're going to live with. People don't realize how much choice they have in that. Focusing on gratitude rather than acquisition, focusing on living in some form of love. I mean, I consider kindness and compassion and thoughtfulness, integrity, a form of love, as opposed to a form of disconnect from love.
Yes. I'm like, yeah. Well, it at the end of the day, for me, when I think about the inside of the black box, for me, if for those who are paying attention, what's going through my mind is everything in life is an input-output diagram. Stuff comes in, you draw a black box on a piece of paper, you have a line that goes in the black box, stuff goes into the black box, and then stuff comes out, right? And so what goes into the black box is you, us, me, right? Who we are today. And then what comes out, if you're saying, if you want to live in a world of abundance, the black box is energy management. But I'm also going to say what goes in the black box is just basically love.
Yes.
If you can live with love and respect and I use the word compassion, I have to figure out where that is. But yes, it is I think when you have the intent and commitment to do the right thing, you could see other people, you could be coached by other people, you could learn, you can grow. But now let's turn this back on you. I have loved watching you grow the quality of the services that address, and to me, when I think about your CPOP, it's people wanting to get on the right stage, right? To me, that's if I'm thinking about that customer point of possibility, people wanting to get on the right stage. And I've seen you grow your business. And tell me the inspiration. How does that keep growing? Because you have so many, you keep growing still the same CPOP, but you keep growing the services that you offer.
So some of it comes out of the client requests. So essentially, when we started our first subscription service, it was for speakers in the transformational world. And some of them would come to me and said, well, I want more regional, or I want more business-driven speaking opportunities. So we created SpeakerTunity cities, which basically were regional directories. And then we realized that, well, gee, there's all these different people who now can speak nationally. They don't have to be in one place physically, because all of this has gone virtual. So let's break down our directories for specialties. So you can speak at, your niche specialty all across North America. You want women's business meetings or real estate people or whatever it is. So then we repurposed the content there. Then people kept saying, well, can you get, how about conferences? Can you give me more conferences? So we said, okay, so let's go get conferences. So we just launched a product that will give you 3,000 conferences to pick from and counting. We keep adding almost 1,000 a month. And so with 20 categories. So now people, up until now, we've really been able to serve the emerging speaker, the one who it needs to just get in front of an audience to grow a business. Now we can also serve the keynoters that want to get on the bigger stages. So it expands and grows based on where our audience is asking us to go.
I really like it. So
here's the value associated with that. Let me just tell you the value.
Yeah, thank you. Because there's something missing that we need to talk about. So go ahead.
The value of this is listening to what your clients are telling you, what the universe is telling you, what as I say, I follow God's breadcrumbs. So, hear what's being told to you. The value is not tuning out what the messages are that you're getting and then acting on them. Lots of people will hear those messages and they won't act. But the next part of that value is acting on what you hear, filling the void of what is needed, going where you're called. That's the value.
To me, I think of that as servant leadership. But yes.
Yeah.
It's actually very fascinating. It's being coachable, asking. I mean, sometimes it's just like, well, what do you need? How can I help you? How can I serve you? How can I add more value? But I do agree. You also have to listen. You have to be an active listener. So what's next for you? What do you think? What are some of the breadcrumbs that you're hearing now that you haven't deployed yet?
Well, a lot of people came to our website and said, oh my God, there's so many things here. What am I going to do with all of this? And the message that we heard was, let's make it easy on people. So we have just now launching our membership program where you can get a collection of our events for one monthly fee. So that way you don't have to make a choice. The cost savings are significant because you're getting a lot of things in one, and you can upgrade at any time or downgrade depending on what you need and what you don't need. So that was where it made sense for us. So we created SpeakerTunity members only. And conferences is actually one of the offerings that you can get on the first level of that program. So, that way, and we want to create more community, more of a way to bring people together. So we now also have a speaker showcase there and a resource collective and a community. So we wanted to make it more than just, here's a product, we'll see you later. And of course, that's not our mode anyway, because our mode is always in the sense of integrity that's so important to us. You find stuff outdated, which you will, just because we've got 200,000 leads to pick from. And we're updating all the time, but you're going to find some that are in between are updating. So just send us an email and we'll update them for you. So we believe it's a relationship. It's not, here's a product, see you later. So it's part of our mission to take care of the people that we serve.
Yes. No, I like the model. It's so funny when for me, my brain goes in all these different directions. And sometimes I'm like, if I just agree, there isn't much more to say. It's really fascinating. It's the market's going to tell you what you need. What'll happen over time, there are many other services when I look at all your services that you don't have that you'll get to when the demand asks. There's certainly, you do a lot of partnerships. I see you doing that often. I'd be curious. It was something interesting. Martin just said something, and I thought maybe you could comment on that. He goes, he was introduced to the concept of host leadership versus servant leadership. And I have to look at what host leadership really means. I still like servant leadership, but what do you, what's your initial comment on that?
Well, I think what he's saying is a servant basically is just serving the needs, and a host might be more guiding them, supporting them, bringing them, providing the vision and the picture, and then letting them step into it. That would be my interpretation of that.
It's interesting. Yeah. By the way, I'm looking at the site now, driven by someone, and yeah, it's a lot. It seems like there's a little bit more of a marketing spin on it, but in potentially a good way.
Well, and the homepage you're seeing now will be changing by next week. We're just throwing things up there right now so that people know what's available if they hear about our membership program. But it's going to be way simplified by next week.
Nice. Well, Martin, I want to say thank you for your comment and your thought on that. It's really, and Jackie, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's really about the guide, having somebody lead through being a guide. So walking with you. And I think that might be a great name for people who are really community leaders. Like if you could create a true community, being a guide for that. And for me, once again, I'm going to say what I think I hear is your CPOP, people wanting the right stage. That to me seems like a good guide for you.
And it might not be stage, it might be stages, because sometimes, you want more than one kind of stage. Like you might want podcasts and you might want conferences, or you might want virtual summits and you might want.
I don't, by the way, I don't disagree with you. I was using the word stage like people use the word data.
Yeah.
Right. As a plural. But I just sometimes this is really funny. People wanting the right stages sounded marketing to me. So this is what goes through the head of Mitchell. People wanting the right stages sounded marketing. People wanting the right stage didn't sound marketing. I who knows, right? That would be something as a marketing person, you'd put that out there. You do if that was potentially your CPOP, you put that out there as a query. Like, what do you think of these two? What do you like better, right? Which seems more marketing, which seems more servant leadership, or in Martin's case, host leadership focused, right? All right. So Jackie, given this conversation, was there a question I should have asked you that I didn't?
From a value standpoint, I think the question would be, how do you help others live these values?
Oh, that's a great question.
And
okay, thank you. So Jackie, how do you help others live those values?
The first is to embody those values. The second is to, when you see people who are not necessarily living their highest values, to bring that attention to them in a kind and compassionate way. And the third is, if there are people who are not living those values and are not the kinds of people you want to be working with, then you choose not to work with them, and they pay the penalty of not having you be in support of them. They will learn there's a cost to not actually living from a standpoint of empowering others around them. So some of them will never learn that lesson, and others will look and think, wow, maybe there's a better way that I could be in the future that would not cut me off from people who can support me.
I think I would say on the energetic side, I love what you just said, and we could probably spend a half hour just on that, but we're going to wrap up. On the energetic side, if you create an environment and an energy pathway, when people follow it and they move with you, they grow. That's what I
Exactly.
heard you say. Like
Yeah.
that's so beautiful. I knew having spoken with you and seen you in the past, and yeah, being a female sports writer in those days was pretty adventuresome. I knew we'd have a great conversation. This was absolutely not disappointing at all. It was fantastic. I appreciate you joining me and giving me some aha moments. And for those that want to reach out to you and learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, two, one, they can go to SpeakerTunity.com and explore what we have. And secondly, they can reach out to me at Jackie@SpeakerTunity.com. I'm always, one of the things that surprises people in terms of my values is that I almost always answer an email.
I That's why you're here. I mean, that's every one of the values you talked about is you want to listen to those people with ideas.
I do.
You know,
And with questions. And
yeah.
with questions. I don't understand what's best for me. How can I do this? And a lot of times, if I can't answer the question, I'm going to direct you to somebody wonderful who can, somebody like Mitchell.
Hmm.
So I love to support people in the community who can do better at solving somebody's problem than I can.
And thank you for spreading my cred dust. And Jackie, thanks so much for joining me today. And I would agree, hanging out and watching, being part of SpeakerTunity. If you're someone who is interested in finding the right stage, and then we'll put in parentheses stages, right? Reaching out to Jackie, learning more, going to SpeakerTunity.com makes a lot of sense. Jackie, thanks so much for joining me today.
It was delightful. Thank you, Mitchell. I love hanging out with you always.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yes, right back at you. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you at the next episode.